P. Jayaraj and his son E. Benix have become the faces of India's systemic problem with police brutality. Both men were arrested and in police custody from June 19 to June 23, during which time they were tortured, sexually assaulted, denied medical treatment, transported over long distances against their will, and eventually they died after being rushed to the hospital while still under police custody. And why? Well, according to the first information report by the police officers who arrested them, it was because they violated coronavirus lockdown laws by keeping their mobile accessory shop open for just 15 minutes after the curfew. An offence that should have warranted a warning, or at most a fine with the threat of potentially facing 6 months in prison. Instead, it cost them their lives. The gruesome details of their killings caused an outcry against police violence, prompting calls for police reform and accountability, with many likening the case to that of George Floyd's death at the hands of police in the US in late May. But the deaths of Jayaraj and Benix are hardly isolated cases. The National Campaign Against Torture, a consortium of human rights groups, recently published a report on India revealing that during 2019 alone, 1,731 people died in custody, amounting to almost 5 people a day. 125 of them occurred in direct police custody, 93 of which died due to torture. And yet none of the police officers on duty were charged. The report also mentions how police officers regularly attempt to destroy evidence of torture, fail to conduct post-mortems, perform hasty cremations, and it also notes various accounts of sexual abuse and violence, even against children. Even toddlers. Tamil Nadu, the state Jayaraj and Benix were from, ranks second amongst the worst offending states. The 2019 Status of Policing report in India surveyed over 12,000 police officers across 21 states and provided further insights. 2 out of 5 police personnel in India said they would prefer to punish culprits of minor offences as opposed to a legal trial, while an overwhelming 3 out of 4 police thought it was normal to beat up criminals to extract confessions, and 1 in 4 were of the opinion that killing a dangerous criminal is better than a legal trial. The cases of Jayaraj and his son Benix are tragic examples of this police mentality, with the extent of the torture they endured for so minimal a crime.
First, their knees were smashed with sticks or lathis. Their knees were completely crushed and smashed. Next, their faces were pushed against a wall and blows were rained on their backs and bottom till it ripped and bled.
This is Suchitra, a popular radio presenter, DJ and singer in Tamil Nadu. She was one of the first celebrities to break the story in English for people outside of South India.
They were taken to a spot where there were no CCTV cameras, and steel-tipped wooden lathis or batons or batons or sticks were shoved up their buttholes several times, and there was also a great deal of torture and damage inflicted on their genitalia, because eyewitnesses of the body have stated, they've said that both the genital region and the backside were completely ripped and mangled.
Jayaraj's wife, Selvarani, filed a written complaint to the district criminal court, alleging that her husband and son were murdered by Sathankulam police and volunteers of the Friends of Police, an NGO that assists with community policing. The custodial deaths of Jayaraj and Benix triggered mass protests across Tamil Nadu through late June, with trade union bodies leading demonstrations and calling for justice. 3 police officers were initially suspended, and the entire policing staff at the Sathankulam police station were transferred to other locations with replacements. But mounting pressure from influencers, celebrities, cricketers, and even political leaders eventually saw the state government refer the case to the Central Bureau of Investigation on June 28, with the hearing passed on to the Madras High Court. A probe was immediately launched to look at allegations of brutality, cover-up, security camera footage erasure, collusion, coercion, and false testimonies. Firstly, discrepancies in the initial FIR were questioned, relating to the timings and locations of certain police officers involved. Then, footage from security cameras near their store revealed that Jayaraj and Benix weren't resisting arrest. And inquiries were made about the medical report from the hospital that cleared the 2 men despite their injuries, and the hearing that denied them much needed treatment and instead consigned them to the small holding facility over 100 kilometers away, where their conditions worsened and led to their deaths.
These sections are not grave in nature. See, the allegation is that they did not close the shop and they did not obey the government servant order. The judicial magistrate who remanded these deceased persons should have applied his mind before his remand. At least if they sent for medical treatment, they would have alive today. But I strongly make my allegations against the judicial magistrate who remanded this deceased person. He must be sent for departmental action.
The Madras High Court appointed an impartial judicial magistrate to lead the inquiry at the Sathankulam police station on June 28. The magistrate was able to confirm the allegations of torture and assault against Jayaraj and Benix at the station by corroborating eyewitness accounts. But the magistrate was unable to retrieve any security camera footage, being informed that it was set up to delete its storage every day, and was even threatened by one of the constables he was assigned to interrogate. The initial probe was cut short over fears for the magistrate's safety.
The non-cooperation of Sathankulam police in not handing over relevant records, the lathis made in torturing accused, is unprecedented.
That's Dr. Shyam Sundar. He was an Indian Police Service officer in Tamil Nadu for 35 years, became a Director General, then went on to a stint as a Special Rapporteur for the National Human Rights Commission.
It was not a simple lack of professionalism in police investigation, or in the chain of criminal justice system, namely the police, the government medical officer, the magistrate and the jail authorities have miserably failed to perform their respective legally bound duties, which highlight the systemic rot.
As with the case of George Floyd in the US, the deaths of Jayaraj and Benix highlighted the abuse, corruption and miscarriage of justice that occurs within the policing system in India, and also brought into focus the ways police officers enforce coronavirus lockdown laws, often misreported and unchecked.
Since the early days of lockdown, there have been innumerable reports throughout India of the police inflicting personalized punishments in violation of human dignity, often backed by video footage. Ruthless enforcement without application of mind resulted in plethora of human rights violations and ultimately culminated as custodial torture and murder.
Everything is happening in their custody and in secret manner. The question is, if a person commits a crime in the police department, the case should be impartially investigated. The case should be transferred to some other agencies like Central Bureau of Investigation, and that should be closely monitored by the High Court.
Since the investigation has been handed over to the CBI, 10 police officers from the Sathankulam police station have been arrested, a first for the state of Tamil Nadu. Investigators have also filed allegations for wrongful confinement and the disappearance of evidence. The Tamil Nadu government has compensated both Jayaraj and Benix's families with roughly $13,300 and government job positions, but the investigation is ongoing, and whether they'll receive any real justice is yet to be seen. The state government has also banned the Friends of Police movement from any further activity in Tamil Nadu, pending further investigation of their alleged involvement in the killings. Meanwhile, Suchitra has been forced to delete her video in a request from the Madras High Court, and has had to keep a low profile amid torrents of backlash and trolling. But there's no denying that the outpouring of support from Indians across the spectrum is one of the largest coordinated outcries against systemic abuse and corruption in India's policing authorities. And in the wake of rampant violence during coronavirus lockdowns and the growing movement to call out police brutality across the world, can justice ever truly be achieved for victims killed by authorities?